Okay, have you ever heard of a guy who managed to steal over $350 million and then just poof, vanished? Seriously, this isn't some Hollywood movie plot. This is the absolutely wild, very real story of John Ruffo, who pulled off one of the biggest, most audacious bank frauds in US history and then just disappeared off the face of the earth. So let's start with the man himself, John Ruffo. On the surface, he was just a regular business executive. But underneath, Ruffo had this incredible talent for getting people to believe him, a talent he used to convince some of the smartest banks in the world to hand over $350 million for a project that was completely fake. Of course, he got caught. The justice system did its thing, and he was sentenced to nearly 18 years in federal prison. And you'd think, okay, story over. But no, that's actually where our story really begins. November 9th, 1998, that was the day John Ruffo was supposed to report to prison and start his sentence. But he never showed up. He literally just walked out of his front door, and it was like the ground just swallowed him whole. His disappearing act kicked off this massive manhunt that has now been going on for decades, and it's become one of the most stubborn, baffling mysteries in the history of American law enforcement.
So you have to wonder, how does a guy who's about to go away for almost 2 decades just disappear? To even begin to understand how he vanished, we first have to get inside the head of the man himself, a true master of the con.
For over a quarter of a century now, John Ruffo has been a complete ghost. I mean, he is a permanent fixture on the US Marshals 15 Most Wanted list. That's a spot they save for the absolute most cunning, most dangerous fugitives out there. To put that in perspective, he's been on the run for so long that a lot of the federal agents trying to find him today were probably still in grade school when he first went missing.
So how in the world did he pull it off? How did one guy cook up a scheme that squeezed over $350 million out of some really sophisticated banks? Well, when you break down the scam, it's this incredible mix of just pure audacious nerve and some seriously careful planning.
The plan was just brilliant in its boldness. It all started with a lie that sounded totally plausible, a top-secret project with Philip Morris to invent a smokeless cigarette. He even got a former insider to help forge a mountain of paperwork to make it look legit. Then he went to bank after bank, getting huge loans to lease computer equipment that, you guessed it, never existed. It was basically a classic Ponzi scheme. He'd use money from a new loan to make payments on an old one, creating this perfect illusion that everything was fine. But here's the crazy part. Even the most complex lies can be incredibly fragile. After 2 years and hundreds of millions of dollars changing hands, the whole thing fell apart because of one smart bank executive in Japan who just got a little suspicious. All it took was a single fax sent to Philip Morris. When they wrote back saying they had absolutely no idea what this project was, the entire house of cards came tumbling down. And this is where the story gets really dark. Because the biggest price for John Ruffo's crimes wasn't paid by the banks he conned, or even by Ruffo himself. Nope. It was paid by the people who trusted him the most, his own family. So after he was convicted, the court knew Ruffo was a huge flight risk. They set his bail at a staggering $10 million. For anyone else, that would be it. You're going to jail. But for a master manipulator like Ruffo, it was just another problem to solve. And he knew exactly whose trust he could abuse to solve it. He turned to the very people he should have been protecting, his own family. He somehow convinced his wife, his own mother, and his mother-in-law to put up their homes to cover that bail. They literally gambled everything they had on his promise that he would do the right thing and face justice. And he betrayed them. Completely. The second Ruffo failed to show up for prison, the government moved in. The houses were seized. His family, the ones who stood by him through everything, were left with absolutely nothing. He didn't just steal from banks. He stole his family's entire future just to buy himself a head start. And just like that, with his family's life savings as the price of admission, Ruffo disappeared. He left federal agents with an impossible task, chasing a ghost for the next quarter century. For years, the trail was ice cold. Nothing. But then you get these bizarre, almost unbelievable little glimmers. In 2001, a guy matching his description pops up in Oklahoma, of all places, trying to set up a massive wire transfer from Nigeria. Like, was it Ruffo trying to launder his money, or had the ultimate con man somehow gotten himself conned? Then radio silence for 15 years, until this unbelievable tip in 2016. Ruffo's own cousin swears he saw him at a Dodgers game, just sitting there 4 rows behind home plate. By the time the feds got there, he was gone again.
So why has it been so impossible to find this guy? Well, just look at this. The man stole over $350 million. The official reward for any information that leads to his capture is a measly $25,000. Think about it. If you found him and he still has even a tiny piece of that fortune, what do you think he might offer you to just forget you ever saw him? It's a simple calculation that has clearly worked in his favor for a very long time. And all of this, it brings us to the biggest question of them all. This is the one that turns this case from just a manhunt into a legendary unsolved mystery. Where did all that money go? Now, the authorities, they did manage to claw back a pretty big chunk of the stolen cash, but a mind-boggling amount is still just gone. We're talking about at least $100 million that vanished right along with Ruffo. That's not just getaway cash. That's enough money to build a whole new life, a new identity, and basically become invisible anywhere in the world. Even his own lawyer, Jeffrey Lichman, seemed to have this grudging respect for his client's skills. When a reporter asked if he thought Ruffo would ever be caught, he was just blunt. He basically said, "My money's on Ruffo." That is a chilling vote of confidence coming from the one person who knew his whole situation inside and out. By pulling off this disappearing act, John Ruffo basically joined this exclusive, infamous club of phantom criminals. Guys like D.B. Cooper, the hijacker who jumped out of a plane with a bag full of cash and was never seen again. Ruffo has become a modern legend. He's not just a wanted man, he's a riddle, a ghost in the machine who pulled off the perfect crime and then just ceased to exist. So, what do you think? What's the final chapter in the story of John Ruffo? Is he out there somewhere, living a life of quiet luxury on a hidden fortune? Proof that for him, crime really did pay. Or did he meet a much darker end? Maybe a victim of the same kind of greed that drove him. The mystery is still out there, and it's this crazy reminder that sometimes the biggest criminals don't just break the law. They seem to break the rules of reality itself, leaving the rest of us to just wonder what really happened.